Welcome, everyone. Welcome today to our webinar, the sixth in our Around the World with PTE Academic series. I'm delighted to have you all here as we continue exploring the diverse perspectives and strategies to help teachers and students excel in teaching and preparing for PTE Academic. Today, we're excited to bring you another engaging session on advanced writing skills for PTE Academic that will provide valuable tools and knowledge to support your teaching and empower your students on their PTE journey. I'd like to give a warm welcome to Anna China, who's delivering the session today. Anna is a highly qualified English language instructor and has been teaching preparation courses since 2000. She'll introduce herself shortly. Now, a few housekeeping bits of information before we start. I've opened the chat and QA functions for you. The chat is visible to everyone in the webinar, while the QA is only visible to me. Please only share general questions in the chat for Anna and use the QA for any specific questions you'd like me to address during the session. This will help keep the conversation organized and ensure your questions don't get missed. Okay, now a quick icebreaker. Let's get to know each other a little bit. I'm curious who is joining us today. So I am going to copy and paste in here three, in fact, questions. And I would love you to answer them. So please write your location. So which city, country are you currently joining from? Your work setting. Do you work independently? So are you a freelance teacher? Or do you work for a prep center, perhaps, or a language school, an agent? And finally, your goal. What do you hope to get out of today's webinar? So quickly from me, I'm based in London and I am working for a digital learning company. Guess which one? Pearson. And I hope to get out of this webinar, well, learning how we can support our students with writing in the PTE academic test. Okay, over to you, Anna. I can see lots of entries coming in the chat. So hello to everyone and over to Anna.
Thank you, Magda. I'm delighted to be here. Hello, everyone. Well, of course, teaching is a passion, and I think that all of you will agree with me. I was just talking to Magda that even a bad day is a good day because we always inspire and we are inspired by our students. So I've been teaching since 1986. It's like a long time, but always teaching English as a foreign language since Canada. I'm from Canada. And I just love the experience of teaching international students. I feel it's so enriching. Besides that, when we have many questions and we don't know how to solve some of our questions, we go into research. So that's when I decided to do a master and a PhD to try to find answers to so many questions in teaching. Of course, I still have many questions, but some of them were answered, and I'm going to try to share here with you what I've learned throughout these years. And I hope also that you can share what you have learned. So we're going to get started with the advanced writing skills for PT Academic. Welcome all. I can see that there are people from all over the world. I'm originally from Canada, as I said. I grew up, I studied and everything. And then I had the chance to move down to Brazil, which the climate, you will agree with me, it's a little bit warmer and nicer. And I'm a tenured professor and I teach also prep courses. So my life is with English as a foreign language, and I just love the experience. Okay, now in this session, we're going to tackle together how to write complex sentences, how to write the introduction and essays, and how to proofread. So it's it's a lot to dive into, but I'm sure that we'll tackle it all. And throughout the webinar, if you have any questions, please just send them in the chat box. I'll do my best to answer all the questions. You really don't have to wait for the end of the session to put questions in the chat box, because sometimes it's like, if we wait until the end, by the time we loop it back, it can lose, the meaning. So just send in the questions. So when it comes to complex sentences, many students, they're uncertain. And us as teachers, we want them to be able to grasp the concept and use complex sentences. Now, why are complex sentences so enriching? How can they contribute? Well, the first thing is that they express relationships. So when we look at the sentence, that number one, expressing relationships, what can we see here? We can see that because the project was delayed, the team had to work overtime to meet the deadline, causing a lot of stress among the members. Okay, so this sentence brings us the because. So because the project was delayed, this is a subordinate clause. So it expresses a reason, it clarifies a reason. So that's when it expresses the delay with the overtime and the deadline. So it connects all the elements in one sentence. Gina, they cause and effect. There you go. Excellent. Lovely. The second one, while the research, it's flow and coherence then. So while the research team gathered extensive data, they ensured that all sources were credible and properly cited, thereby maintaining the integrity of their findings. So while the research team gathered extensive data, this gives us like a temporal, time. It will relate the time. They ensured that all the sources were credible and properly cited. This is the main clause. And then thereby maintaining the integrity of their findings. This will connect, it will show coherence. So the three elements of the sentence, the research team gathered extensive data, then it's connected to the fact that this data was credible, and then it kind of like connected. So it's connect, right? So that's the function of the complex sentence. You connect content and components. Then conveying maturity and sophistication. I love this one because when it says the maturity, that means it's writing that is very well put together. While acknowledging the significant advancements in renewable energy technology, so this is our subordinate clause, it is essential to consider the socioeconomic impacts on communities that rely heavily on fossil fuel industries. So once again, look at how well put together the ideas are. The advancements in renewable energy technology and how this will reflect. So it really is a step up when you can help your students put together complex sentences to convey maturity, to convey coherence, flow, and of course, enhancing style and variety. There are many more, features to complex sentences. I brought the ones that I feel can really contribute to the students so the students can achieve higher scores, okay? The style and variety. Even though the conference was virtual, the organizers managed to create an engaging experience, which included interactive workshops, live Q&A sessions, and networking opportunities. So this sentence, it's really, there's a lot of information, but at the same time, it's clear and it's well. So the conference, how it was, the experience, what was included. So you see how it's like you're connecting all the dots, right? That's what I love about the, encouraging and bringing the students to write complex sentences. Do any of you struggle with complex sentences that the students, they really can't grasp the real concept and put it together, and they kind of like, they try to include the conjunction, but it just sometimes just doesn't come out right. Do any of you go through this experience? Can be, yes. There is, though, a certain style to writing. If you look at the style guides, international style guides of writing, though and although we should consider that although we should use it at beginning, if the subordinate clause is at the beginning, and though if it's in the middle, there is, a very clear, it's not very clear, sorry, but we know that according to style, to writing, there is a belief, if you look at several style guides, that we should consider this, although when it's in the beginning and though when it's in the middle. I really like that. Okay, now, subordinate clauses and relative clauses. Here we go. How to write a subordinate clause. So this is kind of like how I chop it down for the students. So I explained that there's a main clause, that's an independent clause, and you have to have a subordinate clause, a dependent clause. The other detail that I always like to point out is that the conjunctions, it's when you have two ideas and you want to join these two ideas. Now, in order to join, you need to analyze the relationship between the ideas to put them together. And that's when you choose the conjunction, the correct conjunction. It's understanding this relationship. Yeah, Gina, it's a concept that's pretty confusing, I agree. But sometimes if you try to break it down like this, and then the relative clause or the relative pronoun, it's when it refers back to an element to add information. So it's not new, it's not a different idea. You're adding information. So that's kind of like how I put it. If I'm in class, I put the two on the board and I start to work with them. So the conjunction is when you take two ideas and you want to put them together. You have to understand the relationship between the ideas. Do the ideas contrast? Are the ideas related? Is one idea the effect or the cause? And that's when you decide what conjunction you're going to use. Now, when you want to add information about a person, an object, then you're going to use the relative pronoun. So it kind of like helps them understand better. Well, the subordinate clause, it cannot stand alone as a complete sentence. So you always need another sentence for it to make sense. Now, relative clauses, adding extra information to a sentence by using relative pronouns, such as who, whom, whose, which, and that. So when we kind of like show this to the student, it helps them, first of all, understand when to use a conjunction and when to use a relative clause. So it does, there's light at the end of the tunnel for them. You start with a main clause. You identify the noun you want to add more information about. Okay? Yeah, okay, so this is interesting too. There's a concept, yes, SANA. You say mechanical use of connectors by students. So it's true, they start to kind of like just shove it in. I have the feeling sometimes because they know that they have to put it there, but they're not really sure. So, but that's it. Once I think this concept of joining different ideas and then adding information is clear, this will help them for sure. And then, so let's go back to the relative clause. You're adding information to a sentence and you're going to use a relative pronoun to do so. You will start with a main clause. You will identify the noun that you want to add more information about, and then you will select the appropriate relative pronoun based on the noun. Okay? Now, the more you practice, the better you become. The better you become, the more freedom you have to create. So, of course, we know that when they practice, they will learn and they will start to, tackle it and crack it down. And they start to be more independent as students and as writers as well. It takes a little bit of hard work there, but they will get there. So look at this. There are 3 simple sentences here. The city launched a new recycling program. It aims to reduce waste. It also educates citizens about sustainability. So there are 3 sentences. This is kind of like, it's disjointed, 3 choppy sentences, right? And this is what they do sometimes. And we really want them to be able to put this all together. So we see here that there is information about the recycling program. So what do we see? That the recycling program is to reduce waste. So here we're adding information, right? And then there is a different idea to educate the citizens. So there are 2 ideas here: the recycling program, information about the recycling program, and a new piece of information that's to educate citizens. Let's see what so we can do this. The city launched a new recycling program that aims to reduce waste while also educating citizens about sustainability. So to add information, the relative pronoun that. To show that there are 2 different ideas, the conjunction while, because there is an also. So then, from 3 choppy sentences, we have now a nice complex sentence. Yes, I can see in the chat box that many teachers go through. It's nice, isn't it, Sana? But now let's try to do one together. So there are 4 sentences here. Yes, so the punctuation, we have to be careful with the while, because while we only add a comma when the meaning of while is but. If the meaning of while shows 2 parallel actions, then there's no comma. Okay, so in this case, no comma. Many times, yes, of course, we add punctuation, principally with compound sentences, but that's the relative clauses as well, defining, non-defining, okay? Let's try to do this one together. Try to identify what element is adding information and what is the new. So what are the 2 pieces of ideas that you want, 2 ideas that you want to connect, and what is additional information? I'll give you guys a little minute there to tackle it. There you go, Kuljit. I think you're on the right track. There we go. So the climate change and the study and study. So this is so common. They just repeat without really being aware that they're simply repeating. There you go, guys. You can send in your ideas. Remember, there isn't 100% right, 100% wrong, because this can present many possibilities, not only one. I'm going to bring one, but I'm sure that you guys can come up with other ones. There you go, James. You're on the right track for sure. Cool, just keep it coming. It's great to see what you guys are coming up with. There you go. Focused on climate change, that's it. And then now we want to add, she gathered data over 2 years. And the results were surprising. Okay, there we go. So there are some very nice ideas in the chat box. So this is what I came up with. Like I said, it's one way. Although the researcher who gathered data over 2 years conducted a study that focused on climate change, the results were surprising. So who gathered data over 2 years? This is a non-defining clause because we're adding information. So put it in between commas, conducted a study that focused on climate change. So how can we check that this is correct? And how can we help our students? Imagine that you just eliminate this. So you eliminate the relative clause. Although the researcher conducted a study that focused on climate change, the results were surprising. Now, what do we need here? Who conducted a study? There you go. So this is when we add information, the punctuation, how important it is. That was asked previously. Teaching punctuation is kind of like, it goes side by side with teaching complex sentences for sure. Now, I feel this is something that I wanted to show you. This was a sentence that the student came up with. So when I teach in class, I always try my examples before, really putting them into a slide. What could we do? What would you do? Would you be happy with this sentence, or would you suggest an improvement? For example, this although. The researcher who gathered data for over 2 years conducted a study that focused on climate change, and the results were surprising. There you go. So it's the example that previously a teacher, I can't remember who said that they just kind of like they just add the conjunctions there, and it seems that they know that they have to put conjunctions, but they're just not sure how to deal with it. Because the although, what is the function of although? There you go. So utsav, you brought in a different, so utsav brought in a sentence with a participle focusing on, so you see, that's another option, using participles. Very well. Great job, guys. So as I said, they know that they have to put conjunctions in, they try, they tackle it, and when we read it and we're trying to, then we identify. Once we point it out, most of the time, they can understand where the mistake is. There you go, Iqbal, although is used for concession. And this is not a case of concession, right? We're adding information about the researcher with the relative clause who then conducted the study, right? And we're adding then the results were surprising. Lovely. One more, here we go. Another possible answer that I got from students. Let's see. While the researcher, who gathered data for over 2 years, conducted a study that focused on climate change, the results were surprising. What would we do here to make it even better? Would you make any changes to this one? Would you add an and maybe to the final clause here? While the researcher who gathered data for over 2 years conducted a study that focused on climate change, and the results were surprising. Would that sound better? Okay, Ronald, that's a comma splicing. You guys are right on track. Now, how would we put this to the student? The results were surprising. It's a new piece of information. So you need a conjunction to add it to the sentence, right? There we go. Beautiful. Okay, so complex sentences. This is a little structure that I like to use for me as a teacher. So the first thing that we have to help them do is understand the components. What is the main clause and what are the types of subordinate and relative clauses that can be used? The second is to structure the sentence. Decide where to place the clause, beginning, middle, end. So where do we place it? Where are we going to, is it to begin the sentence with the subordinate clause? Are we going to add the subordinate clause? Then you have to choose appropriately. Select the subordinate conjunction or relative pronoun according to the type of information that is being added, right? So, new idea or different idea, conjunction. Adding information, relative clause. And then, of course, ensure proper punctuation. It depends on the position of the conjunction or the situation the relative pronoun is being used. So, if the conjunction is at the beginning, we know that we add a comma there. If the relative pronoun is being used for a defining sentence or a non-defining sentence clause, right? Let's see what we have here. Yes, James, that was a good one. Okay, so here there's an interesting option. Mikhail, it's great to, so for punchiness, suggest keeping the results were surprising as a separate sentence. That too, okay? Or you can even add something. Interestingly, the results were surprising. You can even add adverbs then, and that's how, there you go. Great ideas in the chat box. So as I said, putting ideas together, there isn't only one option. There are so many options. And once the students understand, I think, this basic concept of conjunctions and relative pronouns, and they start to tackle and put it together, and the kind of exercise that I brought, I think it's really helpful. You have simple sentences, and then they have to put it together. Simple sentences, and they have to put it together. It will ingrain in their mindset the idea of putting, together with conjunctions and relative pronouns, and they will eventually transfer this to their writings and essays and so on. Okay, now the introduction. So the introduction is for PTE. Writing an essay in 20 minutes, it's quite challenging, right? So the instructions say, you will have 20 minutes to plan, write, and revise an essay about the topic. Your response will be judged on how well you develop a position. This is really important. Organize your ideas, so the complex sentences, presenting supporting details, the relative clauses, and control the elements of standard written English. You should write 200 to 300 words. We should always encourage our students to analyze the prompt carefully. Some students they may panic and they just want to jump in and start writing, but taking that one little minute to analyze, what is the main topic? Specific question. Really identify what is the question. So the main topic in this case is education, right? So education is a critical element of prosperity in any nation. The more educated the people in a country are, the more successful their nation becomes. Discuss the extent to which you agree or disagree with the statement. Support your point of view with reasons and/or examples from your own experience and observations. So when we come here, the main topic is education and prosperity, because it says that education is a critical element, right? Okay, Iqbal, there we go, the specific question. So, are countries successful when their citizens are educated? Yes and no, because we know that an argumentative essay will always, the student will get better scores with the argumentative essay. And in this case, it's kind of like guiding for an argumentative essay, not always, but we know by experience that argumentative essays are a better option. And then the question is, discuss the extent to which you agree or disagree, and clearly state the writer's opinion, because it says, remembering the instructions, if we come back here, develop a position, okay? So of course, the specific questions, I always try to encourage the students to find a yes-no side. To rewrite the question in a way that they can get yes, no, it's easier for them to think of developing the argumentative essay when they have the yes, no. Okay, so our country is more successful when their citizens are educated. Yes, because of this. No, because of this. I know that it will be hard to find a no, but if this happens and the student really can't come up, then he's going to do 2 paragraphs with yes. Okay, that's why if the student can tackle complex and compound sentences and relative clauses, the scores will come with the structure. It will boost, and the argumentative essay will not be like, it won't damage so much the scoring. So I propose, it's not a template, it's kind of like really a structure to help students, achieve higher scores. Use an adverbial phrase to trigger the use of the present perfect. It adds complexity. Present perfect, we know that it adds complexity. Definitely, Gina, it is a good idea to break down the question, and guide the students to rephrase it, because by rephrasing, it'll help them really answer and cover the question. That's it. So the first sentence, it's what we call the background sentence. And the intention of the sentence, it is to inform the reader the main topics. It's something, hey, reader, this is what you're going to read about. So use an adverbial phrase. In the last decades, so and there are many options throughout history, recently, right? Authorities have debated about the positive impacts of education in society worldwide. I also like, whenever possible, the little word worldwide. It's a compound word, right? So once again, it'll add then to vocabulary complexity. So it's little details that once you design it in your mind and you share it with the students, and 20 minutes, remember, they only have 20 minutes to get this done. They will tackle and write the introduction much quicker, and they will have more time even to proofread then by the end. Because many of them get stuck in the introduction. It seems that first sentence, they just get stuck there. The second sentence, we reword the prompt. Why do we reword the prompt? Because the reader, in fact, in the real world, doesn't read the prompt. So the essay has to be independent. So you have to set the stage. The writer has to set the stage for the reader. So that when citizens are educated, they develop knowledge to innovate and contribute positively to the economy. So that's the idea, that it is prosperity. So we go back to that main topic, right? That's education and prosperity. So this is not the question yet. You are rewording the prompt. What is the prompt proposing? So where did this start? What was the beginning of this discussion? The beginning is that when citizens are educated, they develop knowledge to innovate and contribute positively to the economy. Okay. And the third sentence is the last sentence in the introduction, also known as the thesis statement. It will inform the reader what will be discussed and the writer's opinion. Remember that this is important when it comes to PTE writing. Personally, I believe that the well-being of a nation is profoundly connected to the education of its citizens. So I always like to start with the personally I believe. Once again, it adds a little bit of complexity, right? So this isn't really a template, but it's a little structure to help your students. I find it very useful, very helpful to have these little tips. Yes, that's a good question. So, Manisha, should we try to use synonyms as much as possible for sure, but I always guide the students, don't get stuck. Just don't get stuck. If the synonym is they're getting stuck because of the synonym, repeat the word. And that's why adding complexity, adverbial clauses, compound words, it can help, kind of like compensate for the lack sometimes of synonyms. Yes, you can rephrase, Sarita, but this is kind of like a rephrasing, right? When citizens are educated, so the more educated the people in a country are, so the people in a country, it's citizens, right? And then when they say the more successful a nation becomes. So I try to take prosperity and the success and contribute positively to the economy. Okay? So it's kind of like, but of course, this is not a student one. I did not have the chance to bring in student because of the time. We would really exceed our 1 hour that we have. But you will see that once you teach them this little idea, adverbial clause, the authorities here. So authorities is a kind of like an abstract element that you can use when the topic discussed is education, environment. But if you're talking about children's behavior, then it's parents or teachers. So there's always, if you're talking about consumerism, it's the consumers, the clients. So you kind of like find always a general subject here. And government, authorities, parents, they end up being repeated. Let's do one together. So this is the prompt. Can you identify the main topic of this prompt? So I think it's kind of like clear that we're dealing with tobacco, cigarettes, right? And not really, okay, not really drugs, maybe, tobacco. But in fact, I feel that the main topic here is smoking, right? So effects of tobacco on people. That's not really the main topic, because then the question is, do governments have a legitimate role to legislate? I don't think that it's the effects of tobacco. We're going to end up discussing the effects of tobacco for sure. It's smoking, right? Now here comes apparently Iqbal is already the specific question. Whether tobacco use should be banned or people should be given the freedom to choose. Okay, you're going to the specific question. Should governments have the authority to enforce regulations such as smoking bans in public areas, or should individuals retain the freedom to choose? So very similar to what you did, Ekbal. There we go. So as I said, I don't think drugs is legalizing smoking, right or not. Smoking is already legal, right? I mean, it's not illegal to smoke. So maybe that's not, it even says here, legally smoke tobacco. This is tricky because you can see that the prompt is, there's a lot of information in this prompt. We have to really filter it. So smoking, and will the government take action? Tobacco is harmful, okay, but besides the tobacco being harmful, it's about the government legislating, right? Raja, I think if we go with the idea that it's tobacco and the effects on our health, we're missing the idea of the government, right? So in a general big perspective, it's smoking. And then we're going to start to debate it. But sometimes, so reader, hey reader, you're going to read about smoking. And then we're going to kind of like, unravel it for. There you go. So Kuljit, good. Sarita. Smoking can be illegal in some places. Yes, it can be illegal in the sense of restrictions, right? But it is legal to smoke. It's not illegal to smoke tobacco, at least. Okay, and then discuss to which extent you agree or disagree and clearly state the writer's opinion. So once again, the adverbial phrase, let's see, here we go. What adverbial phrase could we use for this topic, for this prompt? Okay, so Iqbal. Sorry, I missed your question. Guys, if I missed your question, forgive me. The chat box is rolling quite quickly. Just as Iqbal did, please answer my question. There we go. So Iqbal says, can we write an introduction without the background statement? I feel that if you miss the background statement, you miss preparing the reader. Every time when we're going to make a presentation, oral, written, it's really, I think it sets a very good pace when you have the background sentence, or in an oral presentation, you introduce yourself, you kind of like say, you inform what you're going to discuss. So I would not write an introduction without a background statement. I think it's faulty. I really do. If you use today, James, you're not triggering then the present perfect, right? So today is a good option, but I'm proposing to use an adverbial clause that will trigger. Go back. Okay. So what adverbial clause could be used for this topic? Even though it isn't really an adverbial clause, but I think maybe even though we'll use it in another situation, in the last decade, or even in the last decades, right, for this, I mean, the harmful, the harm caused by cigarettes, maybe 50 years ago, there wasn't enough research, but in recent decades, definitely, so in the last decades, it's been quite, intense. If we say in today's complex world, it's another one, but it's not really something I feel that we say in today's complex world. In today's maybe fast-paced world, if the topic were different. Because the combination of complex world. So the rising number of deaths caused by tobacco use has become a serious cause of concern worldwide in recent years. Okay, Iqbal, it is a background sentence, but like I said, I propose with an adverbial clause, because the adverbial clause and the present perfect will add complexity. And it's kind of like, it's a formula, right? It's a little formula. So, for example, currently smoking is a legal drug. One of the most widely available drugs in the form. Okay, so tobacco, there currently, we would need a little comma there, right? But the second sentence, I'll bring up some answers in just a minute. Can we start the intro like, in the burgeoning science and technology? Okay, Simrandeep, I feel that this is kind of like a sentence that can be used for basically any prompt, because it doesn't really bring in the main topic. Where is the main topic of smoking or tobacco? Yeah, these are like cliche. It's a cliche. Good point, Ekbal. We have to be careful with this. Cool, G, that's it. Introduce the topic and any information surrounding it. The second sentence is when we reword the prompt. So to reword this prompt, we would have to consider the tobacco, right? And rewording the prompt is where the complex sentences come in, because you're putting different ideas, you're putting them together, and you're adding information. So many times, what do? I take the prompt, I break it down into simple sentences for them to put it together. Din, you're on really the right track here. I really like this one. You guys are bringing some very nice ideas. So once again, we reword the prompt, and this is where we can get good, we can make good use of complex and compound sentences. And then, of course, the third sentence, which is the opinion, the writer's opinion. Who reviewed the importance of tobacco, mainly in the form of cigarettes, is one of the most widely used drugs worldwide, which is always debatable, has become more controversial. I'm not sure if the importance of tobacco, but maybe the usage of tobacco or smoking, mainly in the form of cigarettes. There we go. We could do that too, right? Smoking, which is the main topic. That's it. Good option here. Because I wouldn't say that tobacco is important. The debate on like avoiding tobacco could be. So I would say in the last decades, tobacco has predominantly been consumed in the form of cigarettes, ranking as one of the most widely used drugs worldwide. So that would be, a background sentence. What do I try to also add? As the students become more independent in writing and they learn to tackle it, then I start to teach them these little tricks. Okay, now we're going to put an adverb in between, has predominantly been consumed. So as they progress in their writing, then you can start to add complexity to the structure. And once again, then you add the participle. So as they become, they learn how to do it the simple way, you can then start to add elements to enrich. There you go, James. Now, the second sentence is to reword the prompt. And as I mentioned, this is where I like. So the long-term health repercussions are immense, affecting not only smokers, but also the broader community through increased healthcare costs and reduced productivity. So when we say costs and loss of productivity, I really couldn't come up with a synonym quickly, so I put reduced, and I brought in the correlative conjunctions now, not only, but also, because there are two sides that have the same effect. They will both suffer. So the not only, but also is another structure that I really like to teach students, because once again, it adds complexity. So here, once again, as they start to become more knowledgeable and they understand the process, you can start to introduce new conjunctions that once again will boost their scores. So here you have a participle with a correlative conjunction. Muskan, I will. If you could put it back in the chat box, like I said, the chat box rolls so quickly. I'm trying to keep an eye here. Okay, so there you go. So Simrandeep, you're on the right track too, okay? So Muskan, you say, in all likelihood, never will lead a consensual agreement, a constructive dialogue, or smoking can lead to thought. This is, I have seen this structure many times in the internet. I would be a little bit careful because once again, it is a sentence that kind of like you can just change one or two words and it could be used for any introduction. I would be careful with that because I think that we're not really teaching our students how to develop ideas and how to develop language by giving them a sentence that they just have to change one or two words. Okay, I just feel that that isn't really, beneficial for their learning process. And when I see the sentence, Muska, I get this feeling that it's kind of like you can just change one or two words. So maybe you can review some of the way you put it together. What are the components, of this sentence to try to make it more to engage, not to engage, but to bring to the students a learning experience. Okay. In terms of content, it's not that it's wrong. It's just like I said, it's a sentence that I would see many times and just changing one or two words. And many students I know, that's what they do. They'll just, and I don't know, are they, sorry, they're trying to kind of like trick the algorithm, but that's not really what we're trying to do here, right? We're trying to really bring a positive learning experience to our students. So in my view, that's another way, instead of just saying personally, in my view, governments have a legitimate role to legislate against smoking to protect public health. While personal freedom is important, so there are two, remember, the while is to show that there are two parallel actions. While personal freedom is important, the substantial societal costs and health risks associated with smoking necessitate government intervention. Okay, so the two sides here, personal freedom, yes, but there is a substantial cost there. Okay, let me try to catch up here. Okay, many students ask for templates. Yes, Gina, they all want templates, right? And of course, it's their choice, not really our choice, but I think we can encourage them to show them that. You know what I love about PT? It goes like this. PT, there are 20 different questions, 20. And obviously, the 20 questions really cover all of the skills that we in language. So instead of taking this as a moment of, misery or suffering, we can kind of like encourage them to show them that preparing for PTE will definitely, enhance their language skills, which it's a long time effect. It will bring long time, positive effects for their personal life, their academic, their professional life. Because nowadays, communication is language. And if your language skills are strong, you have many more opportunities to succeed and to grow. So the 20, that's the positive side of the 20 different questions because it covers all four skills, developing the four skills while they're preparing for PT. Okay. So I'm looking at the timer and I know that we have to wrap this up. So the introduction, read the prompt, write the first sentence. Remember, this sentence is neutral, do not include opinion, because if not, you're already influencing the reader, but you want to draw the reader. Say, hey, reader, this is what you're going to read about. Then the reader quickly grasps the main argument for the second sentence. That's why you reword it, because the reader does not read the prompt. And then the third sentence organizes by outlining the key points and arguments that the writer will discuss in the following paragraphs. Okay, so proofreading is something that I have been really, as I said, when you don't know how to solve a problem, you go into research. And I've been doing some research with another group of teachers as well, of understanding how we can help our students, be more efficient in proofreading. So proofreading per paragraph. This has been, a big test that we've been, conducting in classes. The advantage of teaching in class is that you can have a better, control of what students are doing. So, James, what's the difference between waffle and good long sentences? Well, I'm not sure if I understand your question with waffle. Waffle is like to just jumble it up all together. That's going to be a run-on sentence, right? Okay, so advantages of proofreading per paragraph and advantages of proofreading the full text. So when it comes to the proofreading per paragraph, it's immediate error correction. It will improve the clarity and coherence for time management and focused attention. There's a smaller piece of writing for the student to focus on. It seems that since it's smaller, they are more focused and they can identify more mistakes. However, of course, proofreading the full text does give an overall consistency, because here you can kind of like improve clarity and coherence per paragraph. There's a big picture perspective. There's a contextual accuracy. You can kind of like, do this holistic refinement and the final polishing. However, I feel that for the 20 minutes essay under time constraint, we just don't get to do this all. We just don't get to do this, contextual accuracy and the holistic refinement. And we just don't have time, because it's like 2 minutes you have max to do the proofreading. While if you chop 2 minutes down while they are writing, it gives you around 30 seconds per paragraph. And you will see that 30 seconds for a paragraph, it's kind of like it has more, you can get more out of it. So for example, here, there are some mistakes here for sure, right? Can you try to tell me where are the mistakes? There can be spelling mistakes, punctuation mistakes. That's it, Sana. I think the 20 minutes too, it's really, really like tight. There we go. Violet, good. Prasant. There we go. You guys are right on spot. Of course, you guys are a teacher, so, but as I said, it's a good experience as a teacher to go through this and see what the student is, the student experience too. Sometimes we have to put ourselves in the student's shoes again once in a while, just to remind ourselves of how hard it is to learn, right? Learning is not an easy process. So here is the correction. You can take like a slide shot of this to analyze it later. These are the most common mistakes that we see a lot. Prepositions, article usage, word order, and spelling. These are the 4 champions of mistakes, let's suppose. The double space too. Well, what did we cover today? How to write complex sentences, how to write introduction and essays, and how to proofread. Well, not how to, but the possibilities of proofreading. You guys were a great group. Thank you so much for your, input and all of your suggestions. Government should have an article. Only if it's a specific government, right? The government. But if it's a general concept governments, maybe not, right? Magda, I think that we've wrapped this up, and this group was awesome. 5 stars for all of you. Thank you so much.
Agreed. Thank you, Anna, as well, for planning and delivering such an informative and engaging webinar, and to all of you, the audience, for joining us today. We hope you found the session valuable and that it provided you with some useful insights to enhance your teaching and support your students in their PTE journey. So just quickly before we wrap up, I'd like to let you know that you'll receive an email on Friday with a link to the feedback survey along with your certificate of participation. Your feedback is incredibly important to us as we continue to improve our future webinars. So please, could you take a few minutes to complete the survey for me? That would be wonderful. So once again, thank you for your participation, and we look forward to seeing you in our next webinar, which we've called In-Class Question Type Evaluation on the 12th of September. So for now, I'll end the webinar and thank you very much for joining.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Magda.
Thank you, Anna.